Hi, I'm Samin. Welcome to my first tutorial and introduction to AngularJS. These are the topics that are covered in this video. First, we will see what is AngularJS. Next, I will talk about a brief history of AngularJS. Then I'm going to talk about the problems that AngularJS solves. Then we will see what are the prerequisites and on which platforms can AngularJS run. Next, we will go through the installation process. And last but not least, I will give a few examples. Then I will conclude the presentation. So the very first question that should come into your mind should be, what is AngularJS all about? AngularJS is one of the hot and trending model view controller style JavaScript-based front-end frameworks for creating single-page, data-driven applications, which is maintained by Google. And if you're wondering what is MVC, which stands for Model View Controller, it is just a design pattern that separates our data logic from our output HTML. It just makes things easier to update our application and code it. AngularJS has become a hot favorite among web developers in building web applications. It has gained so much popularity because of its wide range of functionality, features, and benefits. That is why top companies like PayPal, Netflix, and The Guardians, and so many others use it as their core framework. So since AngularJS is a framework, that means that we have to write our code in a way that AngularJS wants us to, not just any old way. So we can receive so many features that we can inject to our projects. These are some of those features. Initially, we have two-way data binding in which data synchronizes automatically between model and view components, and it's just like a magic when you first see it. The next feature is template, which is view information from the controller and model that is rendered. The next one is filters, which selects subsets of items from an array and creates a new one. This allows us to quickly modify the way data is output and reuse it. Next one is deep linking, which allows you to encode the application state in the URL so that it can be bookmarked. And the next one is dependency injection, which allows the developers to easily create, understand, and test the application. Now let's see when was AngularJS invented and by who. AngularJS was originally created in 2009 by Misko Havery, a senior computer science at Google, and was first released on October 20th, 2010. It was made open source by the team because they wanted to make it easier for all the developers, not just Google developers, to build better applications. Okay, so in this section, I'm going to share with you the reasons why we should use AngularJS and some problems that are solved using AngularJS. The first one is MVC done right. Most frameworks implement MVC by asking you to split your app into MVC components, then ask you to write code to connect them back together. As you can imagine, there would be a lot of work if we were supposed to do this all by ourselves. But Angular implements MVC by asking you to split your app into MVC components, then Angular does the rest for you. Second one is a declarative user interface. To define the app's user interface, Angular uses HTML, which is a declarative language that is more user-friendly and less complicated than defining the interface dynamically in JavaScript. The third one is write less code. Angular allows you to write less code since you don't have to write your own MVC pipeline. The views are defined using HTML, which are much more shorter, and uses data binding, which means that you don't have to put data into the view manually. The fourth one is AngularJS provides a well-framed structure to your entire JS application, so you know where to put each piece of code. This actually helps the separation among various components. The fifth one is two-way data binding. It includes an out-of-the-box two-way data binding, which makes the data binding super easy, so you don't have to worry about getting and setting items when you make changes to your application. And the last one is easy to make HTTP calls. So it makes making HTTP calls extremely easy and also provide many additional operations on top of them, such as intercepting and so on. And actually, there are so many other problems that AngularJS could solve, but I think this would be enough for now. Okay, so you may have wondered what you need to know in order to learn AngularJS. So first of all, HTML and JavaScript are absolutely essential since AngularJS is a JavaScript-based framework and not as a library. It goes without saying that you should be familiar with JavaScript, and since we're talking about building front-end applications, you should be familiar with CSS and JSON, although they're both optional but highly advised though. Secondly, basic model view controllers or MVC concepts, which is a software design pattern commonly used in the development of UI that divides the related program logic into three elements such as model, view, and controller. And the third one is the documents object model, which is a language independent interface that treats an XML or HTML document as a tree structure with each node representing a different part of the document. Okay, on which platforms can AngularJS run? So the answer is that, as we've learned, Angular is a JavaScript framework that runs in a browser, so it can be used on any operating system. To program it, you can use any text editor through an IDE with Angular support, or a plugin for it may make things slightly easier with autocomplete and other features. I personally suggest Atom, which could also be used on any operating system and supports plugins written in JavaScript. Compatible IDEs also could be used, for example, Visual Studio Code, which has built-in support and runs on all major platforms such as Windows, Mac, and Linux. And I'm also going to add the links of them into the description for you to download them. Okay, now we're going to go through the installation process. To install AngularJS on your local system, first you have to install Node.js and npm package manager. To check that you have Node.js and npm client installed, just run node-v and npm-v in the terminal window. Then you need to install Angular CLI to create project generate application and library code and perform development tasks such as testing, building, etc. And to install Angular CLI, just run the following command in the terminal window. Then the third step is that you should create a workspace and initial application. To do that, run the following command where my-app indicates the name of your application and the ng new command prompts you for information about features to include in your initial app. Lastly, run the application. To do that, first navigate to the workspace folder by running cd command on your terminal, then run ng-serve command, which launches the server and rebuilds the app as you make changes to those files. Okay, so the --open option in the previous slide automatically opens your browser into this page. So if you see this page, it means that your installation was successful. Okay, now I'm going to go through some very simple examples regarding AngularJS in Atom. I've already downloaded the Node.js and AngularJS in my computer, so we can go ahead and follow the process I just explained for you to download them. But before going through examples, we have to first download the AngularJS script file. Okay, so you can just go to this angularjs.org page, and then just press download AngularJS and download this file. But I've already downloaded this file, so I'm just going to go straight to the example. So I'm using Atom to implement AngularJS, and to get started with Angular, there are two simple steps. The first step is to add a referencing to the Angular script that we have just downloaded, which is here. Okay, so as you can see, I have copied this path of this angular.main.js file and pasted it within the head section right here. So now we have a reference to our Angular script. The second step is to include ng-app attribute somewhere within the HTML, which I have included into our body element here. So the question that should come into your mind now is that what is ng-app attribute? It's just simply one of many directives in AngularJS, and this ng prefix actually stands for Angular, and this ng-app directive is just a starting point of AngularJS application, and Angular framework will first check for this ng-app directive somewhere within the HTML page. If ng-app directive is found, then Angular bootstraps itself and starts to manage the section of the page that has this ng-app directive. So now what we're actually trying to do in this example is that we're going to compute the sum of 10 and 20. So what are these double curly braces, you may ask? So they're just simply binding expressions. So within these double curly braces or binding expressions, we can specify any Angular expression. So I have specified 10 plus 20. Now what is Angular going to do? It's going to add those numbers together. So it's supposed to return 30, but let's save this and let's run our application. Okay, so it returns 30 as expected. Okay, it works. Now let's take another example. I'm going to remove this ng-app from the body section, and I'm going to add it to the HTML. All right, so now Angular will be responsible for all of these child elements within that HTML because we have added it into the HTML part. So, and now I'm going to add a valid expression, which is going to compute if a 1 is equal to 2 or not. So let's just copy this for sake of simplicity. Okay. It's going to check whether 1 is equal to 2 or not. Let's remove this. Save changes. And let's refresh this page. Okay, it turns false because 1 is not equal to 2. Okay, so, and lastly, I'm just going to show a JavaScript object example within the expression. So I'm going to include an object that has a name property. So I'm just gonna say, name, oops, which is my name. Then I'm gonna give it an age, let's say 21. Then I want to retrieve the name property value. I can simply do .name from this JavaScript object. And when we save, this changes and reload our page. It should return Simon. Yes. Okay, it works. So there were two requirements to get started with Angular. First, add a reference to the script file, and second, include ng-app attribute within the HTML. Okay, so this wraps up my introduction to AngularJS, and to conclude this presentation, AngularJS has capabilities that allow you to express and enjoy the development and testing of the implementation. I hope this was helpful for those who were interested in AngularJS, and thank you so much for listening.